Admiral Una Park stood at the window of Seoul Orbital Station and looked at the stars. She had been looking at those same stars for 30 years. She had fought for them. She had bled for them. And now, she was tired of watching her people die for them. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. She did not turn around. She already knew who it was. "Admiral," Captain Tae Kim said. His voice was tight, angry. "We just received the report from Titan Station." Una closed her eyes. She had been waiting for this news for 6 hours. 6 hours of hoping that maybe this time, the reports were wrong. Maybe this time, her people had survived. "How many?" she asked. 847 confirmed dead, Tae said. His hands were shaking. Including the children's shelter. All 42 children. Gone." Una felt something crack inside her chest. It was a small crack. She had felt it many times before. 12 times, to be exact. 12 attacks, 12 colonies, thousands of her people, dead, and each time, that crack grew a little wider. She finally turned to face Tae. He was young, only 32 years old. He had joined the fleet with fire in his eyes and dreams of protecting humanity. Now, that fire had turned into something darker, something dangerous. "The Velroth?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Yes, Admiral. Their ships came out of nowhere. The colony had no warning. They took what they wanted and killed everyone else." Tae slammed his fist against the wall. "This is the 13th time. 13 attacks. And what do? We send diplomats. We send letters. We ask them nicely to please stop killing us." "Captain," Una said calmly. "No," Tae shouted. "I'm done being calm. I'm done watching our people die while we do nothing. We have the ships. We have the weapons. Why won't we fight back?" The door opened again. Dr. Hana Lee walked in, holding a data tablet. She was the chief language expert for Earth's government. The person who translated every alien message that came to humanity. Her face was pale. "Admiral," Hana said quietly, "I've finished translating the Velrath communications we intercepted." "And?" Una asked. Hana hesitated. Then she pressed a button on her tablet. A harsh, alien voice filled the room, followed by Hana's translation. "The soft ones are easy prey," the voice said. "They talk and talk but never bite. Their worlds are ripe for taking. Their people are weak. They cry for peace while we take their children. Let us hit them again. They will do nothing. They are cowards." The room went silent. Tae's face turned red with rage. Hana looked at the floor. And Una felt that crack in her chest split wide open. For 10 years, she had counseled patience. For 10 years, she had told Earth's leaders that peace was possible. That if humanity showed enough kindness, enough restraint, the Velrath would eventually see them as equals. She had believed it. She had needed to believe it. But now, listening to that alien voice mock her dead people, mock her dead children, she understood the truth. The Velrath did not want peace. They wanted prey, and as long as humanity kept being polite, they would keep being food. The door opened one more time. General Minho Cho walked in slowly. He was an old soldier, older than Una. A long scar ran down the left side of his face. A gift from the first Velrath raid 20 years ago. He had lost his entire squad that day. He had never forgotten. "I heard the news," Minho said. His voice was rough like gravel. "Titan Station. The children." "Yes," Una said. Minho looked at her with tired eyes. "How much longer, Una? How many more funerals? How many more mothers crying over empty graves?" Una did not answer. Instead, she walked to her command console and opened a channel to Earth. The face of President Jisoo Han appeared on the screen. Behind her sat the 12 members of Earth's United Council. They all looked worried. They all looked afraid. "Admiral Park," President Han said, "we've received your request for an emergency meeting." "What is this about?" "Titan Station," Una said. 847 dead. 42 children. The council members shifted in their seats. One of them, An older man with gray hair spoke up. "Admiral, we understand your frustration, but we must consider the diplomatic implications. If we respond with force, we could start a war that—" "With respect, Councilman," Yuna interrupted. "We are already at war. The Velrath have been at war with us for 10 years. We just refuse to fight back." "What exactly are you proposing?" President Han asked. Yuna took a deep breath. This was the moment. The moment she had been avoiding for a decade. The moment she had prayed would never come. "I am proposing that we send the Velrath one final message," she said. "A warning. A real warning. And if they ignore it, we stop being polite." The council erupted into arguments. Some shouted that this was madness. Others demanded to know what "stop being polite" meant. But President Han raised her hand, and the room fell silent. "Admiral," she said slowly, "what exactly have we been holding back?" Yuna smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who had kept a terrible secret for a very long time. "Everything," she said. "For 10 years, we have shown the galaxy our kindness, our patience, our mercy. We let them believe that was all we had." She paused. "It wasn't." Tay stared at her. Hana's eyes went wide. Even Minho, who had seen everything, looked surprised. "The weapons we have built," Yuna continued. "The ships we have hidden. The soldiers we have trained. We created them hoping we would never need to use them. We wanted peace. We truly did. But peace requires two sides, willing to talk. The Velrath only understand one language." "And what language is that?" President Han asked. Yuna looked at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the Velrath were celebrating their latest victory. They were laughing at humanity's weakness. They were planning their next attack. They had no idea what was coming. "Strength," Yuna said quietly. "They understand strength. So let's teach them just how strong we really are." The council voted that night. The decision was not unanimous, but it was enough. Earth would send its final warning to the Velrath Dominion. And if that warning was ignored, humanity would show the galaxy something it had never seen before. A humanity that was done being polite. Ambassador Sora Jin had spent her whole life learning to hide her emotions. She had stood before kings and emperors. She had negotiated with criminals and warlords. She had smiled at people she hated and shook hands with monsters. Nothing scared her anymore. But as her small shuttle approached the Velrath flagship, she felt something cold crawl up her spine. The ship was enormous. It was black and covered with sharp edges, like a weapon floating in space. Smaller ships surrounded it like hungry dogs waiting for scraps, and on every ship, she knew, were soldiers who had killed her people without mercy. "Ambassador," her pilot said nervously, "they're ordering us to dock at Base 7. They say any wrong move, and they'll destroy us." "Let them talk," Sora said calmly. "Take us in." The shuttle landed in a massive docking bay. Velrath soldiers stood in rows, their weapons pointed at the shuttle door. They were tall creatures, almost 8 feet, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were completely black, like deep holes in their faces. They did not look friendly. Sora stepped out of the shuttle alone. She wore a simple white dress, the traditional color of peace for humans. She carried nothing except a small data pad in her hand. A Velrath officer walked toward her. He looked at her like a cat looks at a mouse. "You are small," he said in broken human language. "Smaller than I thought. Your leaders sent a tiny female to speak for them?" "My leaders sent their best," Sora replied without blinking. "Size has nothing to do with strength." The officer laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Come. The Overlord is waiting. He wants to see what Earth has to say this time. He hopes you brought something interesting." Sora followed the officer through long hallways. The walls were decorated with trophies from conquered worlds. Weapons, flags, bones. And then she saw something that made her heart stop. A small toy. A stuffed bear. The kind human children slept with at night. It was sitting on a shelf like a prize. There was dried blood on its fur. Sora kept walking. Her face showed nothing. But inside, a fire started burning. They entered a huge throne room. At the far end, sitting on a chair made of black metal, was Overlord Kreth. He was the biggest Velroth Sora had ever seen. His forearms rested on the sides of his throne, and his black eyes watched her like she was an insect. "So," Kreth said, his voice booming through the room, "Earth sends another messenger. Another weak voice to beg for mercy." He leaned forward. "Tell me, little human, what pretty words have you brought today? What promises? What gifts?" Sora walked to the center of the room and stopped. She did not bow. She did not kneel. She stood straight and looked directly into Kreth's eyes. "I have brought none of those things," she said. "I have brought only this." She held up the data pad. Kreth laughed. "A tiny machine? This is your great message?" "This is Earth's final warning," Sora said. "I suggest you listen carefully." She pressed a button on the pad. Suddenly, the message started playing. But it was not just playing in this room. At that exact moment, the same message was broadcasting from every human communication station in the galaxy. Every ship, every planet, every species with a radio was hearing the same words, and those words were spoken by Admiral Una Park herself. "To the Velrath Dominion," Una's voice said, clear and cold. "You have attacked our people 13 times. You have killed 12,847 of our citizens. You have burned our colonies. You have taken our resources. You have murdered our children." The room went quiet. The Velroth soldiers shifted nervously. Even Kreth's smile faded slightly. "We asked for peace," Una continued. "We sent diplomats. We offered friendship. We believed that even your kind could learn to live beside others without violence. We were patient. We were kind. We were polite. And you gave us corpses. So hear now Earth's final warning. Cease all attacks against humanity within one galactic cycle. Return all stolen resources. Release all human prisoners. If you do these things, we will accept peace. We will forgive what cannot be undone. We will move forward. But if you strike us again, even once, we will stop being polite. You believe humans are weak because we chose mercy over revenge. You are wrong. We chose mercy because we knew what we were capable of. We chose kindness because we understood what would happen if we chose violence. Every species in this galaxy has left humanity alone. Have you ever wondered why? Have you ever asked what makes them so afraid of a small, soft species on a tiny blue planet? Attack us again, and you will find out. This is not a threat. This is a courtesy. You will not receive another. The message ended. Silence filled the throne room. Then Kreth started laughing. He laughed so hard that his whole body shook. He laughed until tears ran from his black eyes. "This," he said between laughs, "this is your warning? Words? More words?" He stood up from his throne and walked toward Sora. He was 3 times her size. He could kill her with one hand. He grabbed the data pad from her and held it up. "This is what I think of your warning." He crushed the pad in his fist. Pieces of metal fell to the floor. "You humans are exactly what I thought," Kreth said. "Weak, soft, full of pretty speeches and empty threats. I'm going to teach your people a lesson they will never forget." He leaned down until his face was inches from Sora's. "I'm going to destroy your outer colonies one by one. I'm going to take your people as slaves. And I'm going to keep that little toy bear as a reminder of how easy it was." Sora did not step back. She did not show fear. Instead, she smiled. It was a small smile. A dangerous smile. "I was hoping you would say that," she said quietly. Kreth frowned. "What?" "We gave you a choice," Sora said. "You could have walked away. You could have lived. But you just declared war on humanity. And now," she straightened her white dress, "now you're going to learn why we were being polite." She turned and walked toward the door. The Velrath soldiers looked at Kreth, waiting for orders to stop her. Let her go, Kreeth said with a wave of his hand. Let her run back to her masters. Let them prepare. It won't matter. As Sora reached the door, she paused and looked back one more time. One more thing, Overlord. In exactly 24 hours, you're going to attack one of our colonies. We know which one. We've known for weeks. She paused. We'll be waiting. She left the room. Behind her, Kreth roared orders at his officers. Prepare the fleet. Attack immediately. Show these humans what real power looks like. He had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake of his life. The Velrath fleet arrived at Proxima 7 like a storm of death. 50 warships, each one carrying thousands of soldiers, dropped out of faster-than-light travel and surrounded the small human colony. The planet below was green and blue, covered with forests and small oceans. 200,000 humans lived there. Farmers, scientists, families, easy prey. That's what the Velrath commander thought as he looked at his screens. The colony had only a small defense force. A few hundred soldiers. Some old ships. Nothing that could stop his fleet. Begin landing operations, he ordered. Kill anyone who resists. Take the rest as prisoners. The first wave of Velrath dropships fell toward the planet like metal rain. Sergeant Junho Shin watched them come from his position on the ground. He was hiding in a building at the edge of the colony's main city. Behind him, his squad of 20 soldiers checked their weapons and waited. Sir, one of them said, there are thousands of them. We can't win this. We're not here to win, Junho said. We're here to buy time. Time for what? Junho smiled grimly. You'll see. The first Velrath soldiers landed in the streets. They were confident, arrogant. They expected the humans to run and hide like they always did. Instead, they met fire. Junho's squad opened up with everything they had. Bullets tore through alien bodies. Explosions rocked the streets. The Velrath fell back, shocked by the sudden attack, but more kept coming. Hundreds, then thousands. The humans were outnumbered 50-1. It didn't matter. In every building, in every street, in every corner of the city, human soldiers fought like demons. They had known this attack was coming. They had prepared. They had decided that this time, they would not go quietly. A young woman named Bami Kang fired her rifle until it overheated, then picked up a fallen Velrath weapon and kept shooting. An old man named Sung Ho drove his truck full of explosives into a Velrath command vehicle, sacrificing himself to take out 30 enemy soldiers. A group of teenagers threw rocks and bottles at the aliens, distracting them long enough for soldiers to flank them. The Velrath commander watched from orbit in disbelief. His soldiers were dying. Not just dying, but being killed by a species they thought was weak. What is happening down there? He demanded. Sir, the humans, they're not surrendering. They're fighting everywhere. For every one we kill, we lose 3 of our own. Impossible. They're supposed to be cowards. But the evidence was clear. The humans of Proxima 7 were not cowards. They were fighters. And they were making the Velrath pay for every inch of ground. Far away, in Earth's solar system, Admiral Yuna Park watched the battle through her command screens. Her face was calm, but her hands were tight on the arms of her chair. The ground forces are holding, Captain Tay reported. But they can't last much longer. The Velrath have too many soldiers. They don't need to hold much longer, Yuna said. She pressed a button on her console. Lieutenant Day. Are you ready? A voice crackled through the speakers. Lieutenant Day Yoon was sitting in the pilot seat of a ship unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. It was called the Reckoning, and it had been built in secret over 10 years. It looked small compared to Velrath warships. But looks could be deceiving. Ready, Admiral, Day said. Just give the word. Yuna looked at the star map. 200 human ships were waiting in hidden positions across the solar system. For a decade, humanity had been building in secret, preparing for the day they hoped would never come. That day was here. All ships, Yuna said calmly. Activate Protocol Omega. Show them what we've been hiding. Across space, human ships began appearing. They came out of hidden stations inside asteroids. They launched from secret bases on moons. They emerged from behind planets where they had been waiting in silence. 200 ships, each one carrying weapons that had never been tested in real combat. At Proxima 7, the Velrath fleet was still focused on the ground battle. They didn't notice the small ship approaching until it was too late. The Reckoning dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in front of the Velrath flagship. It just sat there, alone, facing 50 enemy warships. The Velrath commander stared at his screen and laughed. One ship? They sent one ship against my entire fleet? Sir, the ship is charging some kind of weapon. Energy readings they're off our scales. Impossible. Destroy it. Every Velrath ship opened fire at once. Hundreds of energy beams and missiles flew toward the Reckoning. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Reckoning didn't move. It didn't try to dodge. It just sat there and took the hits. When the fire stopped, the ship was still there, undamaged. Its shields glowed with absorbed energy. What? The commander whispered. Inside the Reckoning, Engineer Mireille Kang smiled at her console. Shield absorption complete. Redirecting energy to the solar lance. Fire, Day said. The front of the Reckoning opened up. A beam of pure white light shot out, so bright that every sensor in the area went blind. It wasn't just a laser, it was the captured power of a star, focused into a single point. The beam hit the center of the Velrath fleet. When the light faded, 17 warships were gone. Not damaged, not disabled, gone. Vaporized in an instant. Nothing was left but floating dust. The remaining Velrath ships froze. Their commanders couldn't believe what they had just seen. Almost a third of their fleet, destroyed by one shot from one small ship. Then Admiral Yuna's voice broadcast across all channels. This is Admiral Yuna Park of the United Earth Fleet. You were warned. You didn't listen. Polite time is over. The 200 human ships arrived at Proxima 7, surrounding the remaining Velrath fleet. The Reckoning began charging for another shot. You now have two choices, Yuna continued. Surrender immediately and leave this system forever, or stay and die. On the ground, Sergeant Junho heard the message through his radio. He looked up at the sky and saw Velrath ships starting to burn. He saw human ships swarming around them like angry bees. He saw the Reckoning glowing with power, ready to fire again. For the first time in 10 years, he smiled. That's right, he whispered to the dying Velrath soldier at his feet. We were being polite. And you idiots made us stop. Above Proxima 7, the Velrath fleet made their choice. Some tried to surrender. Some tried to run. Some tried to fight. It didn't matter. The result was the same. Humanity had stopped being polite. And the galaxy would never forget what that looked like. For the first time in the history of the Velrath Dominion, they were not the hunters. They were the hunted. It started small. A supply station on the edge of Velrath space went silent. Then, a military outpost disappeared. Then, an entire shipyard, with 30 warships inside, was destroyed in a single night. At first, Overlord Kreth refused to believe it. Humans attacking Velrath territory? Impossible. They were supposed to be the scared ones. They were supposed to beg for peace, but the reports kept coming. And each one was worse than the last. Captain Tae Kim stood on the bridge of his warship, looking at the burning remains of a Velrath weapons factory. His crew worked quietly around him, preparing for the next target. 3 months ago, Tae had been an angry young officer who wanted nothing more than revenge. Now, he was the leader of Earth's most feared strike force. The Velrath had given him a name, Ghostfire, because his ships appeared without warning, destroyed everything, and vanished before anyone could respond. Captain, his communications officer said, we're picking up Velrath distress signals from Sector 9. They're calling for help. Tae checked his map. Sector 9 was a military staging area. The Velrath had been gathering ships there, probably planning another attack on human space. How many ships? He asked. At least 40, sir. Tae smiled. Perfect. Send a message to Admiral Yuna. Tell her we found their backup fleet. 6 hours later, 60 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel around Sector 9. The Velrath scrambled to respond, but they were too slow, too confused. They had spent centuries being the attackers. They had no idea how to defend. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it was over, 38 Velrath warships were destroyed. 2 were captured. The rest escaped, running as fast as their engines could carry them. Back on the Velrath homeworld, Overlord Kreeth raged in his throne room. He threw objects at his officers. He screamed orders that made no sense. He demanded answers that no one could give. "How is this happening?" he roared. "They're humans. They're nothing. They're prey." One of his advisors, an old Velrath named Goreth, spoke carefully. "Overlord, perhaps we underestimated them. Perhaps we should consider..." "Consider what? Surrender?" "Never. Not surrender, Overlord. Retreat. We could pull back our forces, rebuild our fleet. Try again in a few years when..." Kreeth grabbed Goreth by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "I will never retreat from humans. I will never show weakness. Find me a way to destroy them, or I will destroy you." He dropped Goreth to the floor and stormed out of the room. But while Kreeth refused to accept reality, the rest of the galaxy watched with amazement. Species that had feared the Velrath for generations saw something they never thought possible. The great conquerors were losing. The unbeatable warriors were being beaten, and they were being beaten by humans. Dr. Hana Lee spent her days translating intercepted Velrath communications. Each day brought new messages of fear and confusion. "They fight like nothing we've seen before," one Velrath officer reported. "They don't follow normal battle rules. They attack from everywhere at once. They sacrifice themselves to hurt us. They never stop. They never rest." One of their soldiers was surrounded by 20 of ours. Another message said, "We thought he would surrender. Instead, he smiled and pressed a button. The explosion killed all of us. He died laughing." What kind of species dies laughing? Hana read these messages to Admiral Yuna during their nightly briefing. The Admiral listened quietly, her face showing nothing. "They're starting to understand," Yuna said when Hana finished. "Understand what, Admiral? That we weren't weak. We were never weak. We just chose not to show our strength." Yuna looked out the window at the stars. "For 10 years, they saw our kindness and called it cowardice. They saw our patience and called it fear. They had no idea that every day we held back, we were making a choice. A hard choice. The choice to not become like them," Hana said softly. "Yes," Yuna nodded. "But they didn't want peace. They wanted prey. So now they get to see what happens when humans stop holding back." Meanwhile, on a planet deep in Velrath space, General Minho Cho led a ground assault on a prison camp. For years, the Velrath had been taking human prisoners from their raids, using them as slaves to work in mines and factories. Minho had sworn to free every single one. His soldiers fought through the camp's defenses in less than an hour. The Velrath guards, used to beating helpless prisoners, were not ready to face trained warriors. They fell like grass before fire. When Minho entered the main prison building, he found hundreds of humans in terrible condition. They were thin, weak, covered in scars from beatings and hard labor. Some had been prisoners for years, but when they saw Minho and his soldiers, they didn't cry. They didn't fall to their knees in relief. Instead, they stood up straight and asked one simple question: "Where can we get weapons?" Minho stared at them. These people had been starved, beaten, and tortured. They should have wanted medical help. They should have wanted to go home. Instead, they wanted to fight. "You don't have to," Minho started. An old woman interrupted him. She was missing 3 fingers on her left hand. "They took my grandson. Killed him in front of me because he tried to protect another child. I'm not going home until every one of these monsters pays." Minho looked at his sergeant. "Give them weapons." Within an hour, the former prisoners were armed and ready. They joined Minho's forces for the next assault. They fought harder than anyone. Back in the main Velrath prison, a captured officer looked at Minho with confused eyes. "I don't understand," the officer said. "We broke them. We tortured them. They should be empty. Why do they still fight?" Minho knelt down in front of the alien. "Because that's what humans do. You can hurt us. You can break our bones. You can take everything from us. But you can never break our spirit. Never." He stood up and walked away. "You should have taken our peace when we offered it," he called back over his shoulder. "Now you get our war. And we don't stop. We don't give up. We don't forget." The Velrath Dominion was crumbling. Their outer territories were falling one by one. Their allies were abandoning them. Their soldiers were starting to desert. And Earth's fleet was getting closer to their homeworld every day. The hunters had become the hunted. And the prey had become predators. Humanity was done being polite. And the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The Velrath homeworld was a dark planet, covered with black cities and red rivers. From space, it looked like a giant wound in the universe. 2 billion Velrath lived there, along with millions of slaves from a dozen conquered species. Now, 300 human warships surrounded it. The Reckoning floated at the front of the fleet, its weapon charged and ready. One shot could crack the planet's surface. A few more could turn it into dust. Admiral Una Park sat in her command chair and looked at the planet that had caused so much pain. For 10 years, the Velrath had killed her people. They had burned colonies. They had taken children. They had laughed while humans begged for peace. Now, finally, they were the ones begging. "Admiral," Captain Tay said from his station, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's Overlord Kreth. He's requesting to speak with you." "Put him through." The screen flickered, and Kreth's face appeared. He looked different from the arrogant monster Ambassador Sora had met months ago. His eyes were tired. His skin was pale. He looked like someone who had finally realized he had made a terrible mistake. "Admiral Park," Kreth said, his voice shaking slightly. I am calling to discuss terms." "Terms?" Una raised an eyebrow. "You mean surrender?" Kreth's jaw tightened. Even now, even at the end, his pride fought against the truth. But finally, he lowered his head. "Yes, surrender." The Velrath Dominion surrenders to Earth. The bridge went silent. Officers who had lost friends and family to the Velrath stared at the screen. Some looked satisfied. Some looked angry. Some had tears in their eyes. Tay stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Admiral, we can end this now. One shot. One shot and the Velrath are gone forever. No more attacks. No more raids. No more dead children." Una didn't answer immediately. She understood Tay's anger. She felt it herself. Every night, she dreamed of Titan Station. She saw the children's shelter burning. She heard their screams. How easy it would be to give the order. How simple to wipe out the species that had caused so much suffering. The galaxy would probably thank her. No one would miss the Velrath. But then she thought about what humanity was supposed to be. What they had always been. Even in their darkest moments, she thought about mercy. "Overlord Kreth," she said slowly. "Do you know why we were polite for so long?" "Kreth." Kreth looked confused. "Because you were weak. Because you feared us." "No." Una shook her head. "We were polite because we knew what would happen if we weren't. We knew the destruction we were capable of. We chose kindness because we understood the weight of our power." She stood up and walked closer to the screen. "Your species has conquered hundreds of worlds. You have killed billions of innocent people. You have built an empire on blood and suffering. By any measure of justice, you deserve to be destroyed." Kreth's face went pale. "But that's not who we are," Una continued. "That's not why we fought. We didn't fight for revenge. We didn't fight to become like you. We fought to protect our people and to stop you from hurting anyone else." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Here are the terms of your surrender. Your military will be completely disbanded. Every weapon will be destroyed. Every warship will be dismantled. You will release all slaves from every species immediately. You will pay reparations to every world you have conquered. Kreth nodded slowly, relief flooding his face. And most importantly, Yuna said, her voice turning cold, you will never raise a weapon against another civilization again. Not in 10 years. Not in 100 years. Not ever. She leaned forward, and Kreth actually stepped back from the screen. Because if you do, Overlord, there won't be a warning. There won't be a speech. There won't be negotiations or terms or mercy. There will just be silence where your species used to be. Do you understand? Kreth nodded again, unable to speak. Say it, Yuna demanded. Say you understand. I understand, Kreth whispered. Good. You have 24 hours to begin releasing the slaves. My ships will remain in orbit until the process is complete. She cut the transmission. The bridge erupted in cheers. Officers hugged each other. Some cried openly. After a decade of pain and loss, the war was over. Humanity had won, but Yuna didn't celebrate. She walked to the window and looked at the dark planet below. She thought about all the people who had died to reach this moment. All the soldiers, all the civilians, all the children who would never grow up. Victory didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion. 1 year passed. Earth had changed. The small, quiet planet that most species had ignored was now the most respected world in the galaxy. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations came to visit. They wanted to meet the humans who had defeated the unbeatable Velrath. They wanted to learn from the species that had been so merciful in victory. Some came because they respected humanity. Some came because they feared them. Either way, no one would ever underestimate humans again. Ambassador Sora Jin stood before the Galactic Council, representing Earth for the first time. The council chamber was massive, filled with beings from every corner of the universe. For generations, Sora said, humanity sought peace. We reached out to every species we encountered. We offered friendship and cooperation. Most of you ignored us. Some of you, like the Velrath, saw our kindness as weakness. She paused, looking around the room. Let me be clear about what humanity is. We are not conquerors. We don't want your worlds or your resources. We want to live in peace, to explore the stars, to learn and grow alongside other civilizations. Her voice hardened. But we will never be prey. We will never be victims. And we will always, always protect our own. If any species threatens our people, our colonies, or our children, they will learn what the Velrath learned. She smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. Politeness is a choice. Remember that. On a quiet moon far from Earth, Admiral Yuna Park visited a memorial. It was a simple wall of white stone, covered with names. 12,847 names. Every human who had died in the Velrath attacks. She placed a single flower at the base of the wall. Behind her, Admiral Tae Kim, as he was now called, stood in silence. He was no longer the angry young captain who had demanded revenge. War had changed him. Victory had changed him. He understood now what Yuna had always known. Do you think they'll ever try again? He asked. The Velrath? Anyone. Yuna stood up slowly, her old bones aching. She looked at the stars, the same stars she had watched her whole life. No, she said quietly. They've learned what polite was holding back. She touched the memorial one last time. And they'll never forget. They walked away together. Two old soldiers finally at peace. Above them, the stars shone bright and cold, full of wonders and dangers and infinite possibilities. Humanity was ready for all of it, because they were done being polite. And the galaxy would remember that lesson for 1,000 years.